The first report cards of the school year are coming out, showing more failing grades than usual.
Numbers show the percentage of students failing classes has risen by as many as 2 or 3 times.
News Channel 3's Hannah Knowles joins us live in Kalamazoo this morning. And Hannah, educators say learning from home is a big contributing factor.
School districts from coast to coast and right here in West Michigan say a number of factors are to blame for the increase in Fs we've seen on report cards this year. As you mentioned, online learning and access to internet, 2 of the top reported challenges for online learning. Now, with students learning from home, educators say they are seeing more kids skipping assignments, not participating in class discussion, and running into technical difficulties resulting in incomplete or late work. The failing grades during the pandemic also reveal how equity gaps in the education system are growing. Experts say English learners and disabled or disadvantaged students are suffering the most. Ethan Fieldman, the CEO of Study Edge, says nationwide we're seeing an alarming trend in reading and math scores for high school seniors. According to the nation's report card, more than 1 in 6 graduates are not academically prepared for college.
Scores mean that students are not ready for college, right? But they also mean that many of them are not ready for jobs either. So this is a really bad thing for our economy going forward.
If your child is struggling with grades, Fieldman says try to communicate with their teachers, help with homework and deadlines, get rid of any distractions like cell phone or video games, and maintain a strict schedule. Now, teachers nationwide are being instructed to give less homework and really focus in on those important assignments to help students who are struggling with online learning. Here in Michigan right now, high school students and university students are learning from home under the 3-week pause that is set to expire this week.
We have an update to a story we first brought to you yesterday morning right here on News Channel 3.
New data shows there's more failing grades than normal on this year's first report cards, and parents in West Michigan say the challenges of online learning are partly to blame. News Channel 3's Hannah Knowles did some digging into our local school grade statistics, calling into district officials for hours. And Hannah, you also spoke with the Portage mom who's sharing her concern this morning.
Yeah, Kirk, nationwide report cards show the percentage of students failing classes as more than 2 to 3 times. And on top of that, 1 in 6 graduates are not academically prepared for college. The mom I spoke with says she's seen the impacts from online learning in both her children, so she's taking matters into her own hands.
I'll say for my daughter, she is stressed. I don't fault the teachers. Her teachers are great. And teachers are under a lot of stress. I just think the fact that the isolation on top of sitting in front of a computer all day and then having all this homework on top of that, it just becomes a bit much for the kids.
Bolden's daughter is a junior in high school and her son a 9-year-old who they pulled out of public school due to the impacts online learning was having on his mental health. Bolden says as a working parent, it's hard to monitor both her children learning from home while juggling the overwhelming amount of homework school districts assign. Nationwide, educators say they are seeing more kids skipping assignments, not participating in class discussion, and running into technical difficulties resulting in incomplete or late work. I wanted to see where our local school districts report cards sat on the grading system this year, so I reached out to 7 different West Michigan districts, nearly all declining to comment. Kalamazoo Public Schools, Battle Creek Public Schools, Mattawan Public Schools, South Haven Public Schools, Pawpaw Public Schools, Otsego Public Schools, and Portage Public Schools. Not one school district provided me with any statistics, but Portage Public Schools did send me this statement, reading in part, "We have seen that there are many challenges for students learning remotely, not just grades, but socially and emotionally, we see it's taking a toll." That toll, something Bolden says her family is experiencing firsthand.
We ended up pulling him out of KPS because he was literally crying every day. It was too much for him to sit and try to read online through all these passages, and it was just too much for him.
I also ran a poll on my Twitter page asking you, parents at home, if you've seen a change in your children's grades. 44% say yes, 54% say no. I would also like to point out that the superintendents I spoke with over this phone say that it's not just the children who are struggling with the changes for online learning. Parents, staff, and educators all across the board say they've also been impacted by this as well. Now, as a West Michigan community, districts say that they are working to provide students with the best and safest option to continue their education, and hopefully the grades don't suffer too much. Reporting live, Hannah Knowles, back to you.
Now moving to a story our morning team's been investigating for weeks after our News Channel 3's Hannah Knowles uncovered some startling statistics showing the impacts online learning is having on our children and their grades.
And that's right, Kirk, and she joins us live now this morning from Kalamazoo County. And Hannah, since then, you've heard back from more local school superintendents. Take us through what you've learned since your update last Tuesday morning.
As you mentioned, I've been working on this story for about 3 weeks now. I started asking our local superintendent questions after a nationwide report showed more failing grades on report cards this year compared to last. After reaching out to several districts across our viewing area, along with Governor Gretchen Whitmer herself, I finally got some data back that shows this trend is true, and it's happening right here in West Michigan.
For our high school, looks like we went from about 7% to 11.5% failing grades. Our middle school, 3% of the grades assigned were failing grades, and this year was closer to 10%.
A middle schooler, that's a big chunk of people failing. You know, are they going to be ready to go to high school?
What's happening now will impact how next year starts, and we need to meet kids where they are. So if they're not ready, that's where we're going to need to start them when the fall begins.
Rick Rio, the superintendent for Pom Pom Public Schools, is not the only one who tells me his students are hurting and their grades are struggling.
Am I seeing an increased failure rate? Absolutely. But I'd say we're at least 50% probably.
Tim Allard, the superintendent of the Battle Creek Area Learning Center and Alternative High School, says his students who already have a tough time in school are now being put to the test.
When you give them an online class that's designed for everybody in the state to use, it has to have a certain amount of rigor behind it. The reading and the comprehension level for some of our kids is very difficult. Nobody wants to be real public about the fact that the kids are struggling, but it's not just happening at alternative high schools like ours, it's happening just about everywhere.
A struggle students have been dealing with since last spring when Governor Gretchen Whitmer canceled all in-person learning.
It's a lot better than it was in the spring, I can tell you that. So we've come a long way. We aren't where we want to be, but we're just going to keep after it, you know, because we don't have a ton of options right now.
In the last 2 weeks, I've reached out to Whitmer's press office multiple times to see if she has a response to the impacts online learning is having on our students' grades. 5 emails sent out, not one response back.
We've gotten that feedback from parents. It's challenging, and they notice a change in their kids, and they're really, to some level, depressed.
I have no doubt the toll this has taken on them emotionally is adding up. It's just been really, really hard, you know, and, you know, we're going to have a lot of catching up to do when things get back to so-called normal.
And as you just heard, both superintendents tell me that this is really taking an emotional toll on their mental health, and there will be a lot of catching up to do. If you're seeing this trend happening in your children or your district, reach out to me. Let's talk. My contact information is at the bottom of your screens now, or you can head to our website, wwmt.com, and connect with me there. Reporting live in Kalamazoo, Hannah Knowles, News Channel 3.